Hello everyone and welcome to this week's scripting tutorial. This tutorial is going to be a little bit different because we're going to be talking about the client and freelance or work side of things rather than the actual programming part. So I'm going to take you through two real-world failure examples that I've been through, one of which went through about 50% of the way through the project before it was stopped, the other which was basically 99% finished but was not completed. I'm going to be telling you what these projects were so you have an idea of what kind of feasible projects are available out there for you. And I'm going to tell you about the things I've learned and the problems with these projects because there's a lot you can learn from each failure, and those are the kind of things you need to basically look back at and fix so that you can have a much better business model and a much better experience for yourself communicating with other people. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind you down below to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon next to it to be notified of when new videos are coming out twice weekly on the channel. And also down in the description you can follow me on GitHub and Instagram to be notified of when new code is live, and as well you'll be updated of when videos come out. And don't forget to join the Discord, where we have a thriving community of over 60 members now and growing. And in the future, there's going to be more text channels and a much more thriving plugins and extensions discussion as well. So the first example I'm going to be talking about today was a project that only made it 50% through the way of the process. Essentially, it involved me quoting some things, writing a couple of basic scripts, and one fully functioning script that already did what they requested. So for this guy Eric, he basically wanted a script that would interface with their website. Their website was exporting lower thirds, title sequences, and other things. Essentially, this script was an interface between a website where the website would spit out JSON data, which was basically the information of lower thirds, titles, and other sequences. And it was going to be 4 scripts, one for each of those. There's going to be a script to create a lower thirds, there's going to be a script to create full screen titles, etc. And basically, I had to quote out each one of these scripts. And what they were going to be doing is having a JSON folder that the After Effects script read coming from the website, and After Effects would generate that lower third or whatever type of element it was based on all of the JSON data. And then it would render out the video with the newly updated data and then put that in a specific folder with a certain file name, so that way the web server could look at that folder essentially and grab that file. So overall, this project was totally feasible. I quoted for all 4 of the scripts, and one of the scripts was actually required to be in InDesign, Illustrator, or Photoshop because it was to make PDFs and edit PDFs, which would be possible in those programs. And the main thing that I learned from this project is that you need to understand the project thoroughly and establish what is feasible up front with the client. It's very important that you, as the person writing the script or creating the product for the person, needs to thoroughly understand what is required and what the vision inside of the client's head is, basically of what they want. And it's also your responsibility to establish with them, after you've gotten this thorough knowledge, of what is feasible inside of whatever you're creating. In this case, the script, it was totally possible to read the JSON data. It was totally possible to create some lower thirds, change the colors and stuff based on that data. It was possible to render out the video, and it was possible to export any other JSON data or other changes after that. What wasn't feasible, and what I made clear from the beginning, is that essentially that some of the scripts would need to be done in different programs, which was less of my expertise, but still possible, and thus costing a couple $100 extra just so I could have the resources to learn it. And what also wasn't possible is for the script to basically automatically download all the files and upload them back onto their file server. It might be possible, but I know a lot of the scripting has been iffy on the internet side of things lately. But essentially, I told them what was exactly possible, and they said, great, here's the first part of your payment, which we discussed. And essentially how we proceeded is that I quoted all of the projects, and we were going to start with 2 of them. So like most of my projects, I start with an initial milestone, a down payment on the project, usually about 30 to 45% of the entire price. And then I do one at the very end when they're satisfied with the final product to finish things out with the rest of the amount. I'm going to discuss more in depth of why I do this and why you should do this as well in the next example, but after I established this this rule with them and they paid the upfront fee. That's a very good sign and trustworthy, especially if they've already been showing you data and designs and things they've been working on, which they had been. So everything was looking good up to this point. But the issue started coming when once I had created the initial bare bones project where the script would take the JSON data that they gave me, it would create an automatic lower third for them, processing their project and spitting out a rendered video. Essentially, after that, they declared that they were satisfied with how it was functioning and we would continue forward, but they had a few more features they wanted to discuss with me. So we had a discussion of what these features were, and what they wanted to do were things I had established were not possible for this particular project. They wanted the script to automatically know where to look exactly on their web server and download the files locally onto the computer, spit them out onto the specific folder the script was looking at, and then they also wanted the script to be able to manage and upload these files to different web servers into the Amazon cloud, essentially. So once they got to this step, saying that our script needed to do all of this, I knew that we might have some problems. In my discussion with the sort of project lead for this project, it was sort of an independent contractor working with a bunch of back-end developers. He basically kept telling me these back-end developers who were doing the website and things also knew Adobe scripting and could basically do everything that I was saying was not possible. And they also mentioned there would be no need to do this in other programs. Adobe After Effects could handle the PDF editing, Photoshop kind of editing, and things like that. But unfortunately, that's simply not possible to edit PDF files in After Effects, as you know. So at this point, I was obviously a little bit frustrated dealing with these people sending messages to the main project organizer saying I was wrong, I'm not saying the truth, and that everything that he wanted was possible inside of one script and application. And I straight up said, well, basically, these are the things that I can do. These are what is possible in the script. And then the web developers will need to develop some sort of backend app, or I'm sure there's already one developed that will ingest those files that I spit out from After Effects. So it will take the MP4 rendered files and then upload those back to their web server. But he insisted that what I was saying was not true and that the other programmer had more expertise, so he was going to go with what he said. So after that, the project was over and I only got the initial payment for essentially creating one out of the 3 or 4 potential scripts that we were going to be working on. And that's why I have that upfront payment of 30 to 45% of the total cost of the project, because if you create a demo or a bare bones design for them and it does some cool stuff for them, you deserve to be compensated for that, straight up. I've had projects where I quoted a really easy price, like $100, $150 for a fairly complex script, and it was fairly easy, so I thought I would charge not so much. And the result of that is often the user receiving their script, even if it's not in source code, even if you just give them a JSX bin, they can take that script and run off, upload it to VideoHive, or just keep it for themselves and never talk to you again. What if you did all that work and you get absolutely nothing, not even a response? So always have the upfront initial payment. Alright, example 2's use case was basically for stock video website. This guy working for YouTube Studio UK, he had a whole bunch of stock footage, and what he wanted to do is have a script that would take each clip of the stock footage and split it into different parts. It would basically put it into different parts, label them clip 1, 2, 3, and 4, and continually ingest and render those out into different formats and resolutions automatically. So what we basically did was set up the deal where I would create a script that would, you'd select a folder, and that folder would be full of these clips. And the script would essentially take all that footage in the folder, bring it in and split it into our predefined parameters. This could be like 4 splits for every clip. It could resize it to different resolutions and all sorts of other things. And this was a fairly small project, somewhere between $500 to $800 for the whole thing. And what it was basically doing was taking in one video and spitting out 8 in different resolutions, qualities, and times. That's a little bit of an understatement because it was a lot more complex, and basically it would automatically load hundreds of videos and spit out thousands. But essentially everything was looking great. The only red flag maybe up front that I saw was that he was talking about work in the future he would be providing to me as well. I found that there's certain red flags you can hear from a client up front, things like promising money in the future, talking about jobs that haven't been established yet outside of the one you're discussing. And there's a whole bunch of red flags, which I might make in another similar themed video to this later. Essentially, all the red flags of freelancing, when you hear someone say something or they act a certain way, these should be big red flags telling you, be ready to get out of this project, or be ready for them to start mistreating you or something to go bad. So the first red flag was him promising future projects, sort of unrelated to scripting, that he would basically be paying me more later, don't worry about it. But he paid the 30 to 45% down payment I require to work, and basically we kept going forward with the project. I created a script that did exactly what he asked. Up to 99% of it was complete, with the exception of maybe a few little things he wanted to add. He wanted to add the ability to add watermarks to his stock footage, and a couple of other things which we technically hadn't discussed in the initial bid. But essentially, everything was working. He had sent me messages and videos saying, wow, that was surprisingly quick, because it was basically a week-long project. And essentially, after that, he said, looking great, maybe we could do the watermarks, maybe add some text or something on top of it. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be something that's fairly easy. We could maybe discuss some additional budget for it, but honestly, I'd be happy just doing it for free because of how smoothly everything had gone. So then this project kind of made a turn for the worst when it was revision time. Up to this point, everything was going super smooth, and I hadn't really required any additional questioning or things like that from him because, as far as I knew, everything was working fine. But as far as I know now, it's possible that he really wasn't testing the script that in depth and maybe touched it once or twice. Because when it came time to discuss his more detailed features about what he wanted to add, such as like watermarking and other things, I had sent him a few test scripts. And because he doesn't have ExtendScript and wasn't really into Adobe at all, I knew that I was going to have to use alerts to pop up to help me figure out what was going on with the system. I probably could have created some kind of debug file and exported that to the desktop for him to send me, but at the time I hadn't figured that out yet. So I sent him a project. It had some pop-ups with alerts, basically saying things, information, variables for me to identify why his script wasn't working and not adding the things that he wanted. And now things took a strange turn where he started to freak out about everything because he had mentioned that previously his time is worth $500 an hour, and anything he does is basically worth $500 an hour. So when it came time for him to basically test it out and he saw that there was alerts coming up, he sent me a message saying, I just wasted 2 hours of my time, aka $1,000, wasting my time on this broken script product. And of course, I just simply said, I'm just asking for screenshots of the alert messages that are coming up because that's information that helps me decipher what's going on and what's wrong with the script. But at this point, he had had enough and started calling names after his frustration got worse when I asked for some screenshots. I asked that he could send some screenshots of the alerts or his After Effects screen, followed by, if it's not enough information, we could always just do a screen recording with OBS or something. And even just sending him a link to OBS apparently is a waste of time. And after all these questions of simply asking for a screenshot of the After Effects screen, a screenshot of one of the alert messages, he stopped answering the questions and started getting a little bit irritated. And by a little bit, I mean he started to get condescending. When someone starts to call you things that they don't normally call you, specifically things like buddy or boy, or things that are basically looking down upon you, and then they start talking themselves up in the same paragraph essentially, that is a huge red flag and you should definitely get out. Of course, the previous thing he had been doing of avoiding answering questions, if you can't get the answers to the questions you need to fix the product or the script, get out. And this guy, he just stopped answering questions altogether and decided to talk about himself, how much his hourly worth is, as well as how broken my products and experience was. But it does not stop there. To finish out this story, he wanted his initial payment back. he had received a script which to this point had the full abilities he had originally described. It could ingest an entire folder full of all of his files, 4K, 1080p, as many as he wanted, as long as they wanted, and it would automatically cut them out into the different sections he wanted, resize them into any of the resolutions he selected, and it would render these out to the MOV or MP4 or whatever specific format he wanted. Following that, it would put them all into a nice folder, remove the original files as he requested, and then continue the process. And he asked for his initial payment back, which is kind of ridiculous considering he received his fully functioning product, and I was more or less waiting on him to make the final payment before we discussed these extra features which we were already testing out. But I would get a little bit more feisty in the past, trying to use my scripting channel and experience as reason for him to just listen, and trying to use my professionalism and somewhat of experience to get things to work. But obviously that did not work. So what it ended up coming to is a PayPal dispute where I provided screenshots of all of our chat, him saying that the script was working and everything as he wanted, because it was up to a point. And then basically the PayPal dispute went back and forth for this money, and finally I got it because I provided actual evidence. He kept escalating on the very last day possible to try and get it to be prolonged, but eventually, after he wouldn't provide any evidence, I provided screenshots, more and more evidence each time he escalated. I finally got to win and kept the money. Of course, that was just to keep the initial payment. I was waiting for the final payment, which I never got. So obviously a couple of examples of a real world scripting scenario that didn't go so well. There's a lot you can learn from stories like this, and a lot you can gain from them, especially lessons of what not to do in the future and red flags to look out for in clients. Maybe I'll do more videos like this in the future, like red flags of freelancing, setting up how you'll do payments with people, etc. But that's going to do it for this week's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of when new videos are coming out twice a week. And of course, down in the description you can follow on GitHub and Instagram. Make sure you check out and join the Discord, where we have over 60 members now, talking about scripting, extensions, plugins, not so much, but soon to be, general things, and we'll also probably be adding an expressions section soon. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.